We shall. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to see you all here for our How to Bend and Not Break webinar with Vijay Bhatt. Let me first start off by introducing our speaker, Vijay. Vijay has been a cancer thriver since facing colon cancer in 2001. Through using holistic and integrated approaches, now 19 years later, he's still cancer-free and a better person than before. Cancer healed me, he says. He has co-authored My Cancer is Me, The Journey from Illness to Wholeness with his wife, Nalima. Not only is Vijay a highly sought-after keynote and motivational speaker on the topics of cancer, stress, well-being, and leadership, he's also a pioneer cancer coach and a YPO accredited speaker. Vijay also leads Stress to Swasthya and resilience programs for corporate audiences to address the burning issues of workplace stress and burnout. He has lived and worked all over the world and has served in various leadership positions for Ogilvy and Mather for 25 years. He was also a leadership coach and consultant for many blue chip companies across many industry sectors. Reducing the suffering caused by cancer is how he describes his swan song. He calls himself a wanderer, endeavorer, seeker, and student, thriver, and Sherpa, since he's endlessly fascinated by the three domains of nature, culture, and self. We are truly very glad to have him speak with us today. Before we start off with him, I'll just have a quick reminder of some house rules. Everyone to please mute their mics. And during the talk, please post all your questions in the chat to everyone chat box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of his talk, facilitated by Calvin. So without much further ado, over to you, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Deborah and Kelvin, Eiling, and Yunlock for inviting me to this session. I'm so delighted that all of you have joined this session. I will tell you a little bit more about what I'm going to cover. Let me start by sharing my screen and make sure that everyone can see my screen. So let me just check. Kelvin, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Super. Thank you. So the title of my session is How to Bend and Not Break. And the subtitle that I've given it is How Can We Actually Thrive Through the Turbulent Times, particularly the kind of crisis we are facing. The brief given to me by the EO team in Malaysia is to really focus on three areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend about 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes, telling you a little bit about my own cancer journey, which I think will be relevant. The next 15 minutes, I'm going to share 5 big lessons that I have learned from my own journey as well as the various people that we work with. We work with a lot of people around the world and we help them through the cancer experience. So what are my lessons that may be relevant in the current crisis? And then I'm going to spend about 30 minutes talking about this whole idea of building resilience. I have a slightly different take on it. I know everyone's talking about resilience these days, but my approach comes from my own personal experience with a crisis like cancer, and I'll share a little bit about that with you. Then I want to keep about 30 minutes for a Q&A so that we can get everyone's queries and concerns, issues addressed as much as possible. And this is where I will invite Kelvin and Deborah to cluster your questions as much as possible so that we can cover as much ground as we possibly can. The last thing I want to say is Deborah has already talked about keeping your mics on mute and using the chat box for your questions or comments. The only other thing I will say is that I am going to try out a couple of cool new apps in this webinar. And I invite you to participate in that. In case it takes a little bit longer, then please bear with us. But I think you will find the experience interactive and enjoyable. Instead of just looking at me and hearing me, I think we'll get to do some cool new things in the webinar. So with that, I'm going to get started. Let me talk about my cancer journey first. So just by way of background, I was diagnosed with colon cancer in the year 2001. I had successful surgery. I was given the choice by my doctors in the UK at that time on whether I should take chemotherapy or not. They left that decision to me because the statistics were inconclusive in my case for my type of cancer. So I decided not to take chemotherapy, and instead I started taking a holistic and integrated approach, which over a period of time we created ourselves. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But since then, I have started saying some counterintuitive things about cancer. For example, I say that cancer will change your life, maybe for the better. I say that your best chance with cancer is to stop fighting it. And I go as far as saying that cancer healed me. It's not I who won over cancer. It's not I who defeated cancer. It's not I who overcame or conquered cancer. In fact, cancer was my life experience that changed me and healed me. So with that kind of a background and context, let me tell you specifically what are some of the things that happened to me in my journey. I would like to start by acknowledging Nilima. She is my much better half, and she was my caregiver for a long time after my cancer diagnosis. And the truth is that I would not be alive, or I would not be here talking to you today if not for her. So I want to acknowledge her and say that please imagine that she is right here with me speaking to you, because ours has been a shared journey. I was also very fortunate. Unlike most people, I got extremely good help in my early days. And let me tell you my three angels. The first angel was Dr. Bill Mitchell, who was a clinical psychologist. So in addition to my medical treatments, I got a lot of help in terms of dealing with my own psychological, emotional, mental churn that I was going through from Bill. Bill is a world famous psychologist based in London, where I was working at the time. I'm sure you'll find this interesting as well, that I actually got a lot of help from Dr. Songker, who is a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, also based in London. I took his treatments for about 2 years, and then when I moved to Hong Kong, I continued the Chinese medicine treatments. So I understood a lot about how Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and traditional medical systems approach cancer. That was hugely helpful to me, and we use that a lot in our work now. And the third angel is Father Lancy Pereira, who is an educator, who is a holistic health expert, and being a Jesuit priest, he's also a spiritual guide. So he came and spent 10 days with us in London, and he taught me a lot about how to look at cancer from a completely different lens. So my question has always been, if I could get such good help in the early days of my diagnosis and treatment, why can't everybody else in the world also get the same kind of help? As a result of this kind of help that I got, early on in my journey, something flipped, something changed in the way I was looking at cancer and looking at myself and looking at my life. So what happened? The first is that I realized that I don't like the word survivor. Survivor makes you feel as if, you're you're drowning in the sea and the next wave is going to come and dunk you all over again. I just somehow didn't like this word. So I started calling myself a thriver. And I started investigating and researching other people who had also thrived from their cancer, not just survived. So this was a big change for me. It changed the way I was looking at cancer and the way I look at crisis. The second was that I realized I really did not like the word patient. Patient makes you feel so passive, as if you're not involved in your own healing or your own treatment or your own journey at all. And I consider myself a cancer impatient. I wanted to put it behind me. I wanted to get on with the rest of my life. And the third thing that happened was that everyone who I talked to about cancer threw statistics at me. This much percentage, that many months, this much survival rate, that much mortality rate, morbidity rate, all kinds of stuff. And what I realized was that it's very easy to get buried in all these statistics. But what I was really interested in were the stories of the people who had beaten the odds. I was really interested in those anecdotes. And what I realized was that the world does not pay sufficient attention to these anecdotes. The world is trapped by the statistics. So I decided to myself that, you know what, I'm going to think of myself as a thriver. I'm going to think of myself as an impatient. And I want to become an anecdote like all these other anecdotes that I was reading about. And so this sudden thought came to me, which is, what if we reframe cancer as a growth opportunity and not as a life sentence or a death sentence? And so really my entire journey, I think, focuses on this idea that we can reframe cancer, or we can reframe a crisis and not let it overwhelm us, that we can actually do something transformational with a crisis or with a serious illness like cancer. I want to show you a short video. Please bear with me while I just get this ready. It's a 3-minute video, which I think will explain to you better than I can what my approach is to cancer. So just give me a second, please. Before I do anything, let me make sure that I am sharing the computer sound. Okay, so I'm doing that.
Of course, a crab is a strange pet to have. Unless, well, if you're a mermaid, which I'm not, or if you're a cancer thriver, which I am. Think about it. 1 minute, he's harmless, even docile. And then suddenly, he'll snap at the hand that feeds him. Quite like the disease itself, you know. You never really know when the next bite's coming. And that's why I brought this guy home. Cancer is his name, and he's more than my pet. He reminds me that I once had cancer, and that experience changed me forever. More than the surgery, what really hurt was the truth. It wasn't fate that gave me the cancer. I gave it to myself with the life choices I made. So, to be cancer-free, what I had to do was to make better life choices. That's where this guy comes in. Be healthy, Vijay, he says, and be whole. Most importantly, he's my pet and I'm in charge of him, not the other way around. I like to describe cancer as a scare giver because it did threaten my life. But it was no match at all for Nilima, my caregiver. Now together, they keep me focused and positive. People call me a survivor, but I don't like that very much. Look at me. I'm no survivor, I'm a thriver. I've been cancer-free for 11 years, and through it all, we've been co-travelers. To tame your cancer, you have to see it differently. Remember, how you feel is how you heal. So get past your fear of death and learn to respect your cancer experience. That's when you too can stop surviving and start thriving. I used to look at a crab and see hot, spicy crab soup. Now I look at him and I see a new life ahead of me.
Can everyone hear me okay, Kelvin? Super, thank you. So I hope you enjoyed that film, and I hope it gives you the essence of my approach to a cancer and actually any crisis. So I guess one of the lessons we can take is to ask ourselves the question, can this crisis heal us? Just like I believe that cancer can heal me and cancer can heal others, I guess the question we can ask ourselves is, can this crisis heal us? So as a result of my cancer experience, I had to make a very important and a very difficult choice. I had to choose between life and lifestyle. And naturally, I had to choose life because without life, there is no lifestyle. So when I hear the current conversation between life and livelihood, or when I hear the current conversation between life and lifestyle that the crisis is forcing upon us, to me, it's a very simple issue. I don't think there is really any debate. Life must come first. Lifestyle and livelihoods, all that will follow. There is no life, we can't have any of the others. But I must also say that making this choice is not easy because it's been a bumpy and a rocky road for the last almost 20 years now. We've done a lot of things in that time. We've written a book. It's called My Cancer Is Me. We have a very active online presence. We have a terrific blog. More than somewhere between 7 and 10,000 people come to our blog every month. We conduct retreats, group retreats. We've done plenty of these. For some reason, the media takes a lot of interest in my work. I get extremely good media coverage. So here are some examples. And this is my common theme, how cancer healed me. Healed by disease. This, by the way, is a Malaysian publication. I think it's the Sun or the Star or something when I came to Malaysia some years ago. And so on. But more importantly, rather than to just talk about all the stuff that we are doing, I want to talk about what is the purpose that life and cancer prepared me for. I think that may be more relevant for us in this conversation. So I realized some years ago that, I had 10 years experience, both thriving with cancer, and I had 10 years experience of coaching leaders in business. And so I said to myself, why don't I combine the two? And why don't I create an organization which provides cancer coaching services to anyone, anywhere in the world? And so that's what we have done. The key questions that I asked myself then, and I continue to ask myself now, are these three questions. Question number one, perhaps the most important question. When the doctors are treating the disease, who is healing the person? And my concern is that actually the person gets left behind, the person gets forgotten. Everyone is so focused on the tumor, the organ, the treatments, the side effects, and all the rest of it, that the person, that there's a real human being, flesh and blood, behind all this stuff sometimes can tend to get forgotten. So we want to make sure that the person is always kept front and center. The second question I mentioned earlier, I got top quality help in my early days. Why can't everyone get it? And I'm not just talking about the developing countries like India. The truth is that even in the second world and even in the first world, people don't get the high quality help that they need when they are facing the suffering that is caused by cancer. And the third question that I ask myself is, how do we minimize stress at every level and optimize immunity? Because the stress, immunity, illness axis is central to all serious illness, including cancer. And this is not something that the medical profession or even the support groups pay sufficient attention to. So keeping these three questions in mind, what we have actually done is that we have created these three core programs. This is what I now do. This is my work. So these programs can be broadly divided into recovery and rehabilitation and prevention. So the first program is the Thriver program. I mentioned it. It's basically online coaching for individuals and caregivers, so we can reach people anywhere in the world. The second program is called the Sherpa program, which is where we train and certify people who want to become coaches, not the people who want to receive the coaching, but people who say, look, I've been through cancer, I want to give back, or I'm a caregiver, I want to give back. Please teach me how to become a cancer coach. So that's our second program. And the third program is that I don't want to neglect prevention. It's one thing to work with people who have already got cancer, but why wait for cancer? What can we do to help people in the workplace to manage their stress and immunity better so that they can prevent serious illness like cancer? So these are our three programs that we currently run. And all three programs have a common framework, a common foundation. We have an online diagnostic, we have an online metric. So it's a very well-structured and professional kind of a program that we currently offer. So that in a nutshell is my journey. And what I would like to do is I would like to just maybe give you about a minute. If any questions or comments have come up so far, I just invite you to put them in the chat window and just capture them so that we can come back to these questions again a little bit later. So just type them in regarding this part of what I have spoken so far. Thank you, Jean. I'll respond to your question. Since you've asked me privately, I'll respond to it privately. If anybody else has any questions that you would like to put in the public chat regarding anything I have spoken so far, please go ahead. Otherwise, I'll take it that I can move on to the next part of my webinar. A few more seconds and then I'll move on. Okay. Kelvin has asked the question, what was the lifestyle change you mentioned? I'll come to this, Kelvin, a little bit later. In this presentation, I'm going to cover that actually. So let me move on. I'm going to start my sharing again. I hope everyone can see my screen. So through these 20 years, since 2001, almost 20 years, what are some of the key lessons that I have learned that may be relevant for us in the current context? Not so much specifically related to cancer, but to the current crisis that we are facing. The first lesson is that crisis awakens. And I don't think anybody on this call will deny that the current crisis has suddenly awakened us to a lot of things about ourselves, about how we live, about how we work, about life in general. And in a way, this is the higher purpose of crisis, to awaken us. Now, what I have learned is that crisis of any kind, whether it's a health crisis or a relationship crisis or a business crisis or a financial crisis, it basically reveals the character and it demands courage of us as leaders. And so you can immediately see whether it's the government or whether it's the medical fraternity or whether it is business leaders, whether it is NGO leaders, whether it is, you can immediately see that when people are thrown into a crisis, what of their character gets revealed. The second thing that I have seen is that the more deadly the crisis, in other words, if a crisis makes you confront your mortality, like cancer does, or like the current COVID crisis is doing, it changes you. Because as a society, what we have done is we have pushed away all thoughts and all concerns regarding death, because it's not something that we really want to deal with. But when a crisis like this comes, it changes you. It makes you more compassionate, it makes you more human. And the third thing which I keep talking about, which is, I think, very relevant for leaders, particularly a kind of group that is gathered today. All of you are very senior leaders or promoters or founders or chairmen of your respective organizations. It is okay to be vulnerable. In fact, vulnerability, as Nilima likes to say, is an ability. It is not a weakness. And so one of the things that a crisis will force you to do is to be vulnerable and to be authentic. So one of my questions to you to ponder upon is, have you woken up yet? If crisis awakens, have you woken up yet? Or are you still half asleep and in denial of what is happening around us? Point number one, that's my big learning. Big learning number two is that this thing about thriving is a choice, and it's also a journey. Now, what we come across in our work with cancer and what I come across in my work with leaders is that you see three kinds of mindsets. Mindset number one is the mindset of a victim, whether it's cancer or a crisis or anything. A victim is somebody who gives his or her power away and somehow copes with a subnormal life. So this is mindset number one. Mindset number two is the mindset of a survivor. A survivor is somebody who fights the good fight, who claws back to a semblance of the old normal. He says, look, I don't want to lose that old normal, so somehow I'm going to bring that old normal back. But the third mindset, the mindset that we recommend and we propose, is the mindset of a thriver. So a thriver is somebody who doesn't give in to self-pity like a victim, or doesn't go to war like the survivor. Instead, a thriver takes a very different kind of an approach. A thriver honors the crisis, honors the cancer, and reclaims his or her life from it. And in doing so, what the thriver does is to create and embrace the new normal. Again, I find it quite amusing that, we've been working with this idea of the new normal for so many years. And suddenly now with the COVID crisis, this language is coming into the mainstream about the new normal. So I guess my second question to all of you on the call today is, which mindset are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to be a victim and somehow cope? Are you going to be a survivor and fight the good fight? Or are you prepared to think of yourself as a thriver and then go down a path that has not been walked before. Obviously, my recommendation to you is to take the third approach, which is to be a thriver. Related to that idea is this next learning, which is to take the fork in the road. Now, let me give you a little bit of context. Kuala Lumpur or Malaysia is not like this, but in India, I can tell you that we have a lot of potholes and we have a lot of speed bumps on the streets. And most people approach serious illness, or most people approach crisis like it's a bump on the road. In other words, it slows you down for a moment, but then you're past it and then you forget all about it and then you start speeding up again. But cancer or this COVID crisis is not a bump in the road. It's a fork in the road. It is forcing us to change the direction. It is forcing us to not just change our priorities, but to change the direction of our lives, to change the direction in which our enterprises may be headed. And so it's very important to recognize that the fork in the road represents a big new opportunity if we choose to take it. And part of what is required to take the fork in the road is to find and align to purpose. What I realize in working with cancer patients, what I realize in working with leaders, is that very often the fork in the road forces us to reassess, why are we really here? What is the difference we really want to make? What is the legacy we really want to leave behind? In other words, what is our higher purpose beyond the issues of profit or survival and so on and so on and so on? And so I guess my question to all of you is, this is a call to adventure. COVID and the crisis is a call to adventure. Will you heed the call or will you turn your back on the call? My fourth big lesson, which again, this is common language in the current crisis, is about immunity, and that optimum immunity is the key. So there is good research to show that immunity is the fulcrum on which these two dimensions balance out. On one side, as the stress and burnout goes up in any situation or in any crisis, balanced on the fulcrum of immunity, your health and resilience goes down. It's as simple as that. Stress goes up, burnout goes up, health and resilience goes down, and it's all balanced on immunity. Now, this is not just me talking. This is actually based on a science, the science of what is called psychoneuroimmunology. I'm sure many of you will Google it as soon as this talk is over. Please do so. Psycho means our thoughts and feelings. Neuro means our neurological system. And immunology means our immune and endocrine systems. So our thoughts and feelings have a direct impact on the level of our immunity. And so if we can find a way to keep our immunity up at a time like this, that is our best defense against any kind of illness, serious illness, including a virus. The fifth, the next lesson is really the idea that stress and immunity are multidimensional, that it's not just physical. So we look at it at 5 levels. We look at it at the physical level. We look at it at the emotional level. We look at it at the mental level. We look at it at the relational level. And we also look at it at the spiritual level. So coming back to the idea that you are a whole person, you're not just one single dimension. My question to you is that, are you taking full care of yourself? The emphasis is on the word full. Full means, are you looking after yourself at all these levels? And I invite you to do so, particularly now during the crisis, that you look after yourself completely and comprehensively. My fifth big learning is the distinction between curing and healing. And I think it's also relevant in this crisis as much as it is relevant in cancer. So let me explain what I mean by that. See, the word cure has a medical or a clinical emphasis. The focus is usually physical, and it's usually an outside in kind of an approach. And when it comes to serious illness, whether it is cancer or whether it is COVID, it is the medical system or the doctor who has the power. They will tell you what to do, and we simply do it. So that is about cure. But heal is quite different. Heal does not focus so much on the medical side of it. Heal focuses on the non-medical side of it, the human side of it. Unlike cure, which focuses on the physical, heal focuses on the whole person, as we just said. If cure is outside in, then heal is inside out. Healing can only happen from the inside. Healing does not happen from the outside. And so that means that for actual healing to take place, the patient or the individual has to claim power. And so in a way, both cure and heal are very, very important. And so I guess my question to you is, at this moment in time, as you look at your own health and well-being, your family's health and well-being, your employees' health and well-being, your community's health and well-being, I hope that you are balancing both the cure side of it as well as the heal side of it. So these are my 5 big lessons from cancer that I think are relevant for COVID. So just like I did earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause my sharing, and I'm going to give you a minute or two to just capture some questions, if you have them, in the chat on this section so far, which is the 5 big lessons about cancer that may be applicable in the current situation. If you have any questions, please type them in. Thank you, Patrick. Which one of these lessons was most difficult to learn and then in turn implement? I'll come back to that in the Q&A part. Thank you for that question. Maybe 30 seconds more for anyone else who has a question that you want to type in. Okay, looks like that's the only question that has come up so far with this section. That's fine, we'll come back to it. So let me now go to the third section of my talk, which is about just give me a session, please. Seems to be stuck for a while. Yeah, let me just check that everyone can see my screen. Kelvin, can you just give me a signal? Thank you, Patrick, that you can see my screen. Yeah, so now I want to spend the next 30 minutes or so talking about this whole idea of how to bend and not break, how to actually actively build our resilience at a time like this. So what I want to do is that, as I said, we're going to try out this cool new app. So I'm going to ask you to actually copy and paste. I will put it up in the chat just now. I want you to copy and paste the link into your browser. Let me do that now, actually. So here is a link that I've put in the browser into the group chat. If you can please copy this link and paste it into your browser, it will take you to a page, and then I'll tell you what I would like you to do. So let me just repeat the instructions. There is a link that I have posted in the chat. So please just copy and paste that link into your browser, into a new tab on your browser. It will take you to a page, and I'll explain what you have to do next. So what I would like you to do, what I would like everyone to do is, I would like you to take a few seconds to reflect on what are your dominant emotions during this crisis. So if you think about the last maybe 30 to 45 days when this crisis has been upon us, I would like you to reflect and type in one word to capture each emotion, and then hit submit. And similarly, you can do that for 3 emotions. So just type in the one word, hit submit, type in your second emotion, hit submit, type in your third emotion, and hit submit. And you can see what is happening on the screen. You will start to see how this group is actually feeling. It's quite cool, isn't it? Keep going. Everyone who's on the call can type in, so that goes for you. Eiling, Anita, Jai, Kelvin. I'll give you all another 30 seconds. Okay, so anyone still writing? Just put in your last word, hit submit, and then I will lock the screen. Okay, so I'm locking the screen now. Thanks everyone for your contributions. So it's so interesting, right? That we saw how, to begin with, the first few things that came up had to do with anxiety and worry and, maybe a little bit of fear and so on. And then slowly people started coming up with the more positive words: excited, positive, relaxed, hopeful, and then grateful, 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 grateful. And then you can actually see now that, that for all of us, whether you are leaders, whether you are senior managers, professionals, or whether you are junior level workers in organizations or even small entrepreneurs, we are basically dealing with a combination of emotions right now. There's a certain amount of anxiety, there's a certain amount of concern, there's a certain amount of worry, there's a certain amount of fear, but equally, there is an element of being challenged and motivated and excited and curious. And people are seeing new beginnings. People are reflecting, strategizing. So it's quite interesting. And so, really, one of the things that we have to recognize is that as leaders, we are going to have to co hold these emotions. And so, I'm going to go back to my original screen. So we just did that, which is to say, what is your dominant emotion regarding the COVID crisis? I will share that word cloud with all of you after the call is over. And so you can reflect on it, and maybe you want to conduct something like this for your own teams when you go back into your workplaces. So I want to tell you a small story. It's a story that many of you may have heard before. It's a story that comes from Greek mythology as well as from Chinese traditions. It's the story of the oak and the reed. The story goes that there was this huge and magnificent, strong, lush oak tree near a river. And he was taller than any other trees, and he could look around and see everything. And he almost thought that, everything was his kingdom. And then just not far away from him, near the riverside, there was this humble and thin reed. You can see the picture on your screen of the oak and the reed. Now, as usual, what happens is that there was a great storm, and there were howling winds and terrible rain and lightning and so on. And what happened in the storm was that this tall and strong and proud oak tree was toppled, but the humble reed simply bent and survived the storm. So when you think about this story and we think about the crisis that we are facing right now, again, it points us to the fact that, we can either be like the oak. In other words, we can have our strength and pride. These are important criteria. But if they become rigid, if it becomes inflexible, and if it becomes arrogant, then there is a good chance that the crisis or the storm will topple us. On the other hand, if we can learn something from the reed as well, which is to say, can we also cultivate flexibility? Can we also cultivate humility? Can we combine these qualities so that we have the best chance of not only surviving, but also thriving? So I want us to keep in mind this whole idea that we want to be strong, but we also want to be flexible. We want to have pride in what we have accomplished, but we also want to have humility, because at this moment, if we are not humble, there is a good chance that we will topple. So this topic of resilience is something that has been discussed, has been researched, has been many times. So it's not as if this is a new subject for us. There is literally mountains of research on this subject. What I'm going to try and do is to bring it down to its very simple terms in terms of the way I work with it, or whether it's with cancer or whether it's with corporate leaders. So what I have noticed is that this idea of resilience can be looked at these three different levels. So the first level is what I call endurance, which is, do we have the ability to withstand the shocks that life is throwing at us, or that the market is throwing at us, or that the competitors are throwing at us, or that the regulators are throwing at us? So can we simply withstand the shock? How much endurance do we have? That's part number one. That's level number one of resilience. Level number two of resilience is recovery, which is having taken the blow, having absorbed the shock, how quickly and how well can we bounce back? So this has got to do with our ability to recover from the shock, not just to endure it, but to actually bounce back from the shock. And the third one, which most people tend to neglect, is what we've been talking about earlier, which is the whole thriving idea, is what is our capacity for transformation? In other words, can we grow from the experience? Can the adversity become a platform or a springboard for growth and transformation? So what I have understood about resilience, and what I invite you to think about in terms of resilience, is not just endurance, is not just recovery, but also transformation. So I guess, for me, the important the important sorry about that. The important question is to also recognize, and this is very important for leaders, that resilience is a very personal and a very subjective concept. What do I mean by that? It just means that everybody who is on this call, each one's level of resilience is likely to be different from each other. And one of the risks that I have seen leaders take, or the mistakes that leaders make, is that they tend to assume that everybody's level of resilience is the same as theirs. So if you're working with your team members, or if you're working with, let's say, your partners or your stakeholders, just remember that everyone's level of resilience is different. And it's often a mistake to make the assumption that another person's level of resilience is going to be the same as yours. So with that in mind, what I want to do is I want to give you the chance to actually take a resilience quiz. And I'm going to put up another link in the chat box shortly. And the idea here is to give you a little bit of an indicator of how resilient you are. And so it's a 3-minute quiz. And I'm going to put up the link in the chat box now, like I did before. It's also available on your screen. So let me just do that. And you have to do exactly the same thing as you did before, which is copy paste this link into your browser. This will take you to our website where you can answer this quiz. So let me explain. There are 12 very simple questions in this quiz, and you have 4 options to choose from. And based upon whichever options you choose, you will get automatically taken to the second question. And at the end of the quiz, you have to put in your name and email ID, and you will get your results. So I'm going to pause the share for a while so that you can have your 3 minutes to complete the quiz. Okay, 30 seconds more to complete the quiz if you haven't already done so. Now, for those of you who have completed the quiz and got your result, I would like you to go back to the previous link, the link where we did poll ev, where you did the word cloud. And if you click on that link now, you will see a different screen where you can actually choose anonymously what your resilience score was. So I want to give you a chance to, I want everyone to be able to see what was the score for the group. So after you finish your quiz, go back to the pollev.com window and choose which of the three your score says. I hope the instructions are clear. Yes, I will repost the link, Ronald, right here. There you go. So let me just give a few more seconds for people to complete and take the poll. So it looks like almost 90% have medium resilience and 5% each have, or 10% have low and high resilience. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm not sure how many people are still completing this. So I'll give it another 30 seconds and then I'll lock the screen and we'll move on. Okay, so I'm locking the screen now and then we will move on. Thank you very much for participating both in the quiz and in the poll. I'll share the findings so that you can have this in case you are going to use it in any way in the future. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. And I hope, again, everyone can see my screen. Oops, sorry. Yeah, here we go. So I'm sure every one of you has heard about the VUCA world. And for those of you who haven't, this is what VUCA stands for: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So it's a common phrase these days. But the truth is that with the COVID crisis, the VUCA world just got more VUCA. It got more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous. And so this raises the question that if we were already spinning around in a VUCA world and now it just got more so, what is your anchor? What is your refuge? What is your oasis? Where do you go to calm yourself and to center yourself and to ground yourself when things are spinning at faster and faster around you all the time? Now, most people have something that they 2. Let me see, somebody has mentioned something on chat. CK Chin has asked a question. I'll come back to that question, CK. Thank you. What is your anchor? What is your refuge? What is your oasis? So most people have some kind of a practice or some kind of something that they do that grounds them and calms them. But in case you don't, what I'd like to do today is to spend the next 10 minutes going through something called the presence practice. And so, as they say, the calmest place in a storm is the center of the storm, the eye of the storm. So what I would like to teach everybody today and guide you through is a 10-minute presence practice. So I'm going to pause my sharing of the screen for a while, and going to ask everyone to sit comfortably in your chairs. And please follow this practice with me. I think you will all enjoy the experience. And what I'd like you to do is to keep both your feet firmly planted on the floor in front of you. Be in a comfortable position. I would like you to relax your body, close your eyes gently, and just go along with me through this practice. Let's begin. Sit comfortably in your chairs. Feet are firmly planted on the floor. I invite you to keep your palms on your knees, either facing up or down as you feel comfortable. Eyes are gently closed. Body is relaxed. Presence is the foundation of resilience. And I'm going to give you a glimpse of the state of presence that is available within you. We start by relaxing the body. And to do this, we scan the body from the top of the head down to the tips of your toes, relaxing each and every body part as you scan. If you come across any tension, tightness, stiffness, discomfort, just let it go. When the body is completely relaxed, your attention will automatically go to the breath. Even breath is the first signal of presence. I invite you to notice your inhalation and your exhalation. As you inhale, the cool air comes into your nostrils, your abdomen will rise. And as you exhale, your abdomen will fall and warm air will leave your nostrils. You don't have to speed up or slow down your breath. Just witness and observe your steady, natural, normal, rhythmic breath. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. The second signal of presence is a clear, calm, quiet mind. I invite you to bring your attention to the screen of your mind. Imagine you're sitting in a movie hall and you're watching a movie, but what's playing on the screen are all the thoughts and scripts and programs that are running through your mind right now. Just be a spectator. Don't get involved with what's playing on the screen of your mind. Just observe it. Notice what thoughts are running, what programs are running, which apps are open, which windows are open. And then just like you would do on your computer screen, you can go to the top right-hand corner, you can click on the little cross, and you can shut down all the open programs and windows. I invite you to do the same thing with your mind. shut them down, do it kindly, do it gently, and do it firmly. Restore your mind to its clear, calm, quiet state. The third signal of presence is an open heart. I invite you to bring your attention down to your chest area and first become aware of your physical heart, this amazing organ that has been beating away continuously from before the time that you were born and will continue to beat away till our time comes to pass on. Become aware of how persistent and how strong and how committed your physical heart is to your life. And then your emotional heart, the place from which we connect, we engage, we relate with other people. I invite you to open that emotional heart just a crack so that you may connect with everyone else who is on this call, but connect from a heart to heart level, not from a mind to mind level, not from a eye to eye level, not from a transaction to transaction level, but at a feeling level, at a heart to heart level. See what that feels like. The fourth signal of presence is called sensitive sonar. I invite you to become aware of all your five senses and to send out your five senses into the environment so that you can pick up the subtlest of signals that are going on. Can you feel the firmness of the floor beneath your feet? Can you feel the softness of the chair that you're sitting on? Can you feel the warmth of your palms or the back of your palms on your knees? Can you hear the faint noises, maybe of the traffic outside? Become totally and completely context aware. This is a crucial leadership quality. Sensitive sonar. The fifth and final signal of presence is called energetic induction. Each one of us has a unique energy field. I invite you to become aware of your own unique energy field. Some people call it the aura. I invite you to extend and expand that energy field inch by inch, like you're blowing a balloon all around you. It's a big ball of energy, your own unique energy. And as you expand it, I invite you to develop an inclusive attitude so that you can include people in your energy. And also let yourself be included in other people's energy. I know that we are all in our respective homes right now, or maybe some of us are in our respective offices. But can we try and create a ball of energy that is embracing all of us, inside which all of us are sitting, the 50 or 55 of us who are on this call, feeling safe, feeling held, feeling calm, feeling present. Let me just walk you through the signals of presence so that you remember them. The foundation of presence is a relaxed body. Check that your body is relaxed. Even breath. Check that your breath is even. Clear, calm mind. Check. Open heart, physical and emotional. Check. Sensitive sonar, full context awareness. Check. Energetic induction, to include and be included. Check. Now I would like you to repeat these three affirmations after me. I will say one, then you repeat it to yourself. I will say the other, then you repeat it, and so on. You can keep your mics on mute, but you can say them aloud as you hear me call out these affirmations. So let's begin. The reality of this moment, please say aloud, is that I have nothing to defend. The reality of this moment is that I have nothing to promote. The reality of this moment is that I have nothing to fear. The only reality of this moment is that I am here now. The only reality of this moment is that I am here now. Notice how you're feeling, what the state of presence is like for you. Make a strong intention that this state is always available to you, always accessible to you. Make it very familiar, very vivid, very clear, so that you may be able to go to this place of presence whenever there is any kind of turbulence in your life, even on a daily basis. When you're ready, you may slowly open your eyes. Come back to the here and now. You can rub your palms, bring the circulation back like I'm doing. Rub the back of your palms. Rub your arms, both arms. Rub your legs. Rub your torso, your back. If you would like to, you can rub your scalp, your face. Welcome back. So I'm going to ask you to just put down in the chat window, if you can just put down one word or one phrase which describes how you're feeling now after doing this activity. Just one word or one phrase. Thank you, Erwan. Thank you, Eiling. Thank you, Robin, Yunlock, Patrick. Thank you. Jean, thank you. Deborah, Hillman, Kelvin, Lynn. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Chongte. Thank you, Caroline. So while we are in this state of presence, what I'd like everyone to do is to just reflect back on all the stuff that we have covered in today's webinar. Let me just remind you. I shared with you a little bit about my cancer journey, some of my big learnings, which I think may be relevant in the current crisis that we are all facing. There were 5 major learnings which I shared. After that, we talked about resilience, the 3 levels of resilience: endurance, recovery, transformation. I gave you the chance to express your own feelings with regard to the crisis, which all of you did in the word cloud. I gave you the chance to do a quick and informal assessment of your own resilience. There are plenty of more detailed and more in-depth questionnaires available, but this was just a quick overview for yourself. And then I walked you through the presence practice to give you a taste of what is that internal state of calmness, of groundedness, of anchoring, which is in a way the antidote to stress and which is the antidote to turbulence. So what I'd like everyone to do now is, with this in mind, having done a quick review, can you please capture in the group chat what out of this session was most valuable to you? And number two, if you have a question that you would like me to answer, this is your time to capture that question. So I'm asking you to do two things. One is, what was most valuable for you? And what is the question you would like me to answer? So let me give everyone about a minute to capture that in the chat. And then I'll request Kelvin and Deborah to have a look at the questions and just remind me what I should answer in the, I think, about 10 or 12 minutes that we still have left. Thank you, Yunlock. If you have a question, please capture it. Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Kelvin. Yes, to be the calm among the storm. What was the one thing that you will take away? What was your aha moment? What was your big insight? Thank you, Sai. Yes, gratitude itself is such a big insight. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Hillman. Thank you, Jean. Yes, confronting your mortality changes you. Yes, this is the right time. A crisis is the right time to pivot and to rise. Appreciate the opportunity that life has given us, maybe to reset. Thank you, CK, to be able to see crisis as healing as opposed to destruction. And if anyone has any questions that you would like to ask me about any part of what I spoke, it could be about my cancer journey, it could be about the cancer lessons, or it could be about resilience, please feel free. So I'll stop my screen share now and let me check in with Kelvin and Deborah if they have picked up anything that they would specifically like me to address or answer in any particular sequence.
Yes, thank you, Vijay, for amazing sharing. I think we have a lot of calm after hearing what you present to us. I would like to just start with, I think, the questions I think we had earlier. I think the first question was from myself. What was the lifestyle change that you mentioned in your first session, the earlier part?
Actually, Kelvin, I changed everything in my life. It was not just one small dimension. So as I said, I changed my work, I changed my physical eating habits, my exercise habits. I did a lot of work around my emotional state, I did a lot of psychology work, working with Bill on my mental stuff. I did a lot of spiritual practice. I trained myself in all different types of meditations and so on. So that's the reason why I say that, you know, when cancer healed me, actually cancer made me a completely different person than I was before. So it was so significant that I say that I had to deconstruct and then reconstruct my whole identity. It was that much of a significant change. So every aspect of my life actually changed.
Some people I think can do that, but some people it's very dependent on a person, right? Some people are, I'm drawing just an example because my mom is battling cancer, I think colon cancer as well. So maybe her attitude and your attitude are very different. So
Yes.
Getting her, she's in her 70s, getting her to change drastically her lifestyle.
Yes.
Somehow it didn't gel or didn't make sense to her because she's lived so long and she just want to continue enjoying the things that she want to enjoy.
Yes. So it was similar with me. It didn't come to me at one time. I had to start with the easy things and then slowly find that, you know, it helped me, and then I could do more and more and more. I had tremendous amount of resistance. I had tremendous amount of reluctance as well. So it doesn't happen overnight. And that's the reason why we have created a process to be able to do that, rather than to just say to people, oh, go and change everything about your lifestyle.
Yeah. All right, thank you. The next question is from Patrick Hotso. Which one of these lessons was the most difficult to learn and then in turn implement?
Patrick, that's a great question. Actually, the most difficult thing for me, I think, was to accept that my cancer did not come from outside. You know, we all have a tendency when we fall ill to externalize the illness. I think the most difficult thing for me was to basically accept that I had a role in my own cancer, that it was my choices, it was everything about me, actually. So that's the reason why when that penny finally dropped, it was the biggest turning point for me. And that's why the title of our book is My Cancer is Me. That, I would say, was the biggest and the most difficult learning for me to take. Once that happened, everything else fell into place.
Thank you, Vijay. Next question is from Mockin Lock. He said, I'd like to explore, specific to COVID-19, how can we look at the crisis as a fork in the road and not a bump in the road? Maybe give an example.
Yeah. So, you know, let me use business language for this one, because maybe that's where the question is coming from. So, you know, we are all used to saying that we need to change and we need to manage our transition and so on and so on and so on. But I think that what the COVID crisis is doing for us at an individual level, as well as at a business level, and maybe even at a social level, is that it is forcing us to look at structural change, not just surface level change. And so therefore, I would ask everyone to say, look, as an individual, what has been my operating system and my operating model so far? And am I willing to look at a completely new operating model for myself as an individual? But I can also ask the same question of a business. What has been our operating business model so far? And with this crisis, am I willing to look at a different or a new or a modified business model itself? So it's not just about making some small adaptations. As I said, it's really about looking at doing something structurally. So I think if we can distinguish between what is transition, which is usually about adaptation, and what is transformation, which is usually about structural change, I think maybe that will give us some clues. This is the work I do with corporates to actually help them to think through some of these kinds of challenges at a time like this.
All right. So the next question is from CK Chin. So he had low resilience result on the questions. and it shows a sad face. So he wants to know why low resilience is showing a sad face.
Yeah, so the answer is a very simple one, that, as leaders, as promoters, as founders, as chairpersons of our own organizations, as maybe fathers and sons in our families, people look to us to be their role models. And as I think Kelvin and a few people said, that if we do have low resilience, and that is natural, that may be natural for some people, but if we have a public life, and if we are expected to be role models, then people are looking to us to increase our resilience. People are looking to us to model to them how they should behave in a crisis like this. And therefore, the sad face is simply saying to you that, hey, CK, please do something about your own resilience and how you show up in your workplace, or in your family, or in your social, or in your community settings, so that you can be a role model for others to emulate and to follow. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's natural, but it is simply to prod you to do something more concrete about it. That's all.
That's good. From Deborah. Deborah is asking, how often and how long do we need to do this presence practice?
Deborah, that's a great question. So my recommendation is that you should do this presence practice once a day for 30 days without a break. Okay? And what I'm going to do after this session is I'm going to send you my audio, the same guidance that I did. I'm going to send you that audio on WhatsApp, and you can forward it to all your members so that they can download it on their phones. It will always be there. So whenever you feel that there is turbulence, or whenever you feel that you need that 10 minutes of calm in the middle of a crazy day, you can simply do that practice, or you can do that practice at a specific time each day, whatever is convenient for you. You can do it, for example, you can do it when you're commuting. If somebody else is driving, you can simply do it at that time, or you can do it when you are walking in the park, whatever it is. You can do the practice. So I would say that if you do it for 30 days continuously, once a day, then you don't need my guidance. You'll be able to get that state of presence like that.
Awesome. We have a mobile presence.
Yes, I will send that to you.
Thank you, Vijay. Next question is from Rabin. Vijay, I'm also a cancer survivor. Chemo was the most difficult thing I've ever had to go through. I feel that I have come out of this process feeling very aged, especially in my mind. What can I do to reverse it?
Rabin, there are plenty of things you can do. And I'll be more than happy to connect with you separately on this. This is the kind of help actually we provide to many of our clients around the world. And it's not an easy journey to deal with the kind of trauma that both the diagnosis and the treatments of cancer produces. And it needs help, and it needs a process. So all I can say at this moment, not to take up too much time, is that there are so many things that you can do. The mind, whatever has happened in your mind, is not fixed. It is reversible. You can change the script of your mind. I promise you.
Thank you, Vijay. The next question is from Michelle Chow. She said, my mind is asking me to shift the focus to thrive. However, sometimes I feel my emotion is stopping me. May I know how do I overcome this?
What a great question, Shelley. You've identified the conflict that many of us face, right? That our cognitive mind can say that, you should do this. But we find a tremendous amount of resistance coming from our subconscious or the deeper part of ourselves. And that's the reason why most of us can't actually implement our New Year resolutions for more than 10 days, right? That our mind says, oh, you must do this, but somehow there is inertia. So actually what one has to do here is to actually do a certain amount of self-awareness work, to really see what are the values and beliefs that keep a certain behavior locked in place. The mind will tell you to change a behavior. The mind will tell you become a thriver, or to do this or to do that, or do more exercise, or eat more healthy, or sleep more, or whatever it is. But our behaviors are locked into place not by the mind, they are locked into place by our values and beliefs. And so if we want to actually bring about change, and we want to bring about sustainable change, then the mind is not the way to do it. And so most spiritual or philosophical or psychological practices will basically say, shut down your mind and work with the deeper part of yourself, which is essentially values and beliefs. So the short answer to your question is that in order to work with your emotions, in order to work with your beliefs, you'll have to work at a deeper level than the mind. There are, again, plenty of ways to do so. There are plenty of practitioners, I'm sure, in KL who can help you to do that. But if there is something specific you'd like me to share with you in terms of tools and tips, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Vijay. So it's nearing to time. We have one more last question coming from Eileen. So she asks, what are the best recommended ways to increase our immunity? For example, maybe drink hot water or taking supplements, etc. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, great question. Again, as I said, both stress and immunity are multidimensional. And unfortunately, what happens is that both with stress and with immunity, the focus tends to be physical. So even if you look at Eiling's question, drinking hot water, taking supplements, these are all physical actions we can take. They're very important and they can certainly help us with immunity, but they are not enough. So the way I would look at it is to say that in addition to whatever we are doing physically, we also need to work at the emotional level. As I just said to Shelley's question, how are we really looking at our values? Are we living in alignment with our values? If we are living in alignment with our values, our immunity will go up. If our values are not in alignment with our behaviors, our immunity will come down. This has got to do with how we deal with our values. Or for example, if we are thinking positive and optimistic thoughts, constructive, innovative thoughts, our immunity will go up. If we are thinking in a negative spiral all the time, our immunity will go down. So this has got to do with our thoughts. If our relationships around us are healthy and harmonious, our immunity goes up. If the relationships that we are in are toxic or dysfunctional, our immunity will go down. So as I said in my section on stress and immunity, the way to deal with immunity is to deal with it at all 5 levels. Again, there are plenty of ways to do that. There are plenty of techniques. There are plenty of practitioners. There's plenty of research, but it's not a one-dimensional thing. In the same way, even our spiritual habits have a lot to do with our immunity. And so depending on what kind of spiritual practice we have and what kind of guidance we get, it can have a significant impact on our immunity. So it's not an easy answer, I know, but the short answer is I would advise you, Eiling, to take a holistic approach.
Thank you, Vijay, for sharing today's session. It's all about positivity, you know. I believe that many of us will actually survive this and in fact thrive in this kind of situation. Thank you very much, Vijay.
I hope so. And my warmest wishes to all of you. May you all be healthy. May you all be happy. May you all be free from all suffering. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vijay.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Vijay,